Welcome back from the break. You're still watching This Week, and I'm Somna Sambo. Now, still on the issue of constitutional amendment is another contentious aspect of the proposed amendment bills that seeks to establish a House of Assembly for the Federal Capital Territory. Now, critics argue that this move could further complicate the federal balance, as the FCT would have a civil service and a legislature, making it functionally similar to a state if it does have an FCT House of Assembly. Well, joining us to examine this is a former federal commissioner, the Public Complaints Commission, Honorable Dalhatu Ezekiel Musa. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you once again.
So what's been your own thinking? I mean, the National Assembly seems to have looked at its procedures, and maybe they think that they are overburdened by the idea of having to be the legislature for the Federal Capital Territory, and they are now proposing to shift that power to an FCT House of Assembly. How feasible? Because some people are already criticizing that.
Let me thank you for giving me this opportunity once again to lend my voice on some of these issues. I think this issue is long overdue, and the current National Assembly, if they're able to actualize this, they will be one of the best assembly we've ever had as far as FCT residents and indigenous people are concerned, because all along the FCT indigenous people and the FCT resident as it is have been some group of persons that are just living on their own without a serious attention as it has to do with governance to the grassroots. And so if this come to fruition, it will go down the records to having them put their names in gold, to have given the consideration and sense of belonging, the constitutional flesh to the people, because the constitution envisage the right to have some basic rights as a human being, fundamental human rights, not to be discriminated upon, the right to also be given the needed attention you need as a citizen. So the last time I checked, the FCT people, the indigenous people and other residents are not foreigners. They are citizens of this country. So giving them a form of second-tier government will really go a long way to solving lots of our problems. Having an entire National Assembly to be the House of Assembly for the people of FCT is an aberration. And it has created a whole lot of gap when we talk about communication. You have 360 House of Representative members that a lot of us from the FCT don't even know them. And then having them to come and make law, oversight, make law for I and you in the FCT, it's really because they have a whole lot to deal with nationally. And so if we're going to have now House of Assembly for the FCT, which I say is long overdue, because it will now go to give us that structure of a state that we have all been clamoring for. Because once you have the state structure for the people of the FCT, you must have solved 90% of the problem that these persons have been, because making somebody stateless have never been envisaged by the Constitution or the letter and spirit of the Constitution. But this is what is happening to the people of the FCT. They don't have a governor of their own. They do not have the House of Assembly of their own like other states. Meanwhile, Section 199 is saying FCT should be treated should be treated as one of the states. And other rulings now, though sometimes they will tell you the argument is electoral matter, that they declare FCT to be a state. There is no way you will now see a man and you try to give him the woman feature to say, no, he's a man, but he has some buttocks, he has some breasts, the feature of the lady. No, FCT is a state, and so it should be. So the State Assembly is needed, is apt, and they will enjoy every support they need from other Nigeria, because it will be justice for all.
Yeah, I mean, I saw one of those documents that the federal lawmaker who is proposing this had put in place, and he was saying that it should be a 24-member assembly. And a lot of people were already calling to question, how are you going to get those 24 members to be put into an assembly? And isn't this going to clash with the position of the president being the governor of the FCT? And how would the National Assembly do it in such a way that people cannot go to court, and then, of course, it becomes a constitutional matter that there's a clash?
I'm pretty sure that all Nigerians who mean well for this country and are seeing FCT as center for unity will not in any way try to even think of opposing what the good the law that the National Assembly is trying to put in place. The 24 members of House of Assembly, to get them is very simple. For instance, we have 62 wards, electoral ward in the FCT. We have 6 area councils. And if you check some of these area councils, like Amak, is almost like a state somewhere. And so if we have a Kano state where you have, even for House of Reps, you have about 22 member House of Representatives. And also check what the Constitution provides in terms of creating federal constituencies, then FCT is far more to have had more than just 2 House of Representatives. So the delineation, when you check the law creating it in the Constitution, it gives a certain number of persons. When you have a population moving up to that level, you create another federal constituency, proportional representation. So as it is for the FCT, that 24 members of House, to me, you are supposed to even increase it up to 30 or 32.
I mean, if you're bringing because it's like 2 per the area councils, how's it going to be like?
You can even say, okay, if you say 2 per electoral ward, it said each electoral ward present 2, we have 62 electoral ward, or you merge 2 wards to present 1. You can just get this number as you want. What that means is simply to just have equitable and what we call equitable representation of the people, because it's all about people, the center point. If you are defining democracy, for instance, it's for the people, of the people, and by the people. So if you're going to have a representation, even if it is from each ward, for instance, it's not out of place to have an assembly that will be inclusivity, an assembly that will be, will be grassroots rooting and then grassroots driven, so people can have this sense of belonging. That will bring governance closer to the people and to the grassroots. And I tell you for free, this government will have a seamless kind of operation, and you will enjoy the needed support you need from the people of the FCT.
What will be the position of the FCT minister if, for example, this bill is introduced? Because people are beginning to question some of these federal lawmakers and saying that, look, that law cannot be, the FCT House of Assembly cannot be, brought in place in isolation. The Constitution makes provision for the president to be the governor of FCT, and he now delegates his governorship powers to a minister of FCT. So if you are going to bring an FCT House of Assembly, can the FCT House of Assembly, for example, summon the governor like other state assembly usually do? And then if the governor is summoned, is it the president who delegated his powers to the minister that will be coming, or is the minister that will be sent? So, because of this constitutional bottlenecks, they are saying that the issue of FCT House of Assembly, it needs to be done in a careful manner. While I listened to some of the debates where some other lawmakers too also said that if you look at London, they have a House of Assembly for the city, and then of course Washington and all of that, that if we're practicing democracy, there has to be room in such a way that people are represented.
That takes me back to the idea we've always clamored for, the FCC and FCT. When you check the master plan, you have the FCC, Federal Capital City, and then you have the other 6,000 kilometers square for the FCT. We've been on this to say, in our wisdom, what should happen is we can still have the city being manned and governed by a minister whose power of the president is being delegated to just be at the FCC, Federal Capital City, to ensure that the seat of government, the city center, and all of that is well taken care of, infrastructurally and all of that. The other side, where you have the 6,000 kilometers square, where you have more citizens of this place, the indigenous people and other Nigerians residing, let them have a second-tier government, where you will now have a governor, and you will now have this House of Assembly, and governance will be more easier, because when you now have a minister administering and then powers and in the FCT, a lot of people raise this question: how do you now have a minister and he's not manning and taking care of a ministry, but at the entire territory and all of that? If you check the body language of the current minister, he is given to having a full-fledged structure.
That's
He is
a
given
yes or
to it.
wicked.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
okay. He's given to it. If you check his body language, he has deliberately worked towards bringing the head of civil service, FCT head of civil service. If you check, he has also tried as much as he could to ensure that FCT enjoys some states, you know, the TSA, for instance, and all of that. He will have power to. So, we want him to, you know, step up this. What's it called? The effort he's putting, and I'm not sure he will be against having a full-fledged state statute for the people of the FCT, where there will be governor, and then the House of Assembly to man and govern the 6,000 kilometers square of other Nigerians and the people living here. While you leave the FCC for the minister to be to take care of it with governance, infrastructural development, and just like you have mayor and all.
Yeah,
but we
because
cannot
the fear
just
is
go
that
to
the
that
federal
level.
government may lose control of the entire federal capital territory if we continue this way, and by having this FCT House of Assembly. So are you saying that this thing can be fine-tuned in such a way that it's a win-win, and the entire FCT made up of 8,000 square kilometers,
The federal
government doesn't lose oversight?
The federal
over it?
government should be happy that this will happen. You know why? It has too many things in its hand to handle. FCT, the idea of having a seat of power is not such that you will emasculate some people's rights. You relegate them to the background and then make them feel stateless. I'm sure even the federal government is not sleeping over, it's not happy over what is happening, because these are your citizens. You are supposed to be like the big father, the big brother here, to ensure that everybody is put equitably, treated fairly. And so when you have a federal government that has so much in its hand, and then you have little and then conflict here and there, you know, people trying to find their feet, where do we belong to? No, leave this land, it doesn't belong to you, this and that, all these things. I'm sure the federal government itself will be happy that we're not going to have a full-fledged state for the people of the FCT, that federal government can now reach them more and bring them more closer when it comes to governance and when it comes to giving dividends of democracy. So it's going to be a win-win, but for the people, because the federal government are not persons that fall from heaven. They are also human beings who are interested in the governance. And they are also here.
Too. But Commissioner, to try to round off this conversation, I'm very sure you're very conversant with what's going on in other states, including Rivers State. Could the fear also be that, I mean, they don't want a situation whereby in the FCT you could have, you know, these lawmakers, if there's an FCT House of Assembly thinking of impeaching a minister, or is it the president who is the governor now, that they could not serve him an impeachment notice? Could also are there any ways that those could be fine-tuned?
Yeah, you know,
because that could actually serve as a morbid fear.
Yeah, but then usually when you see some of this rift, I keep saying it any day I have opportunity like this, and I said, you know, when you talk about justice and fairness, all of this will not be in place, because when you do what you are supposed to do, as somebody who is saddled with the responsibility to disseminate and then produce leadership, the issue of they want to impeach this person, they won't impeach this person, will not even come. What brings up of the egocentrism, self-centeredness? So, you know, when people take their interest to be way above the collective
of course, that's
interest.
politics.
So,
and of course,
then,
like someone in the villa had told me previously, I mean, you can't have a situation whereby in the federal capital territory, the president will be isolated by another political power that's in charge as a governor, or, for example, in this instance, State House of Assembly. That they want a federal capital where the president is fully in charge. Now, if you have a State House of Assembly or a governorate, like you have said, can the president still be in charge?
If you check the powers our president has, especially Nigeria president, he has enormous power that no any other person will want to come and muzzle with him. It's the same thing with the 36 state governors.
What if another political party wins elections in this? Because we've seen that happen in other countries too.
And so it doesn't, you know, governance is different from politicking at the end of the day. When you have a president who knows his onions, It doesn't matter whether you are in party A or B or C. He brings everybody on board and provides leadership and governance. So that fear should automatically not even come up, because the president enjoys enormous power as a president of Federal Republic of Nigeria. It's equivalent with what is happening in 36. The president has power now if he wants to have one or two things in any other states to either suspend or so. You can even see he has the powers. And so the fear of whether, so, and if the president is really doing what is expected, nobody comes to even want to raise. I tell you for free, you can have a state that can even decide to do one-party system, depending on what they are enjoying as it concerns dividend of democracy. The entire people of FCT can wake up today and say they want to go for one-party system if the entire 858 community of the FCT feel so protected and they are well taken care of by this government. Who will come up to say about opposition or all of that? It is the absence of this that brings in issue of dragging power opposition. Yeah, otherwise, you have people speaking one voice to say this is where we want to go to, because they are enjoying the dividends of democracy, and what is due to them is being given to them.
And of course, the FCT Abuja here has a very, different political voting pattern actually when it comes to. I mean,
but you have the drivers.
In 2019, they don't go where the entire country is going. And many presidents have also, felt bad. I remember former President Buhari saying the FCT is a necessary evil and all of that. Well, as we try to round off this conversation, there's also the legislative part of all of this. Very quickly before I let you go, you will need 24 houses out of 36 state houses of assembly, and of course, when the bills come back, they get to the president of the table of Mr. President and all of that before this can become a constitutionally amended. How feasible do you think this is? We don't have a situation like previous 2016 and all of that when the bills got missing on the way.
My fear has always been the actualization of all of these proposals. I have had time, severally to do presentation at public hearing for constitutional amendment, bringing up the issues of FCT to forefront. I have lost count of how many presentations I have made in terms of constitutional amendment, and at the end of the day, we will just have So I've tried to crack my brain to see how many sections of this constitution have successfully been amended after all to have a new flesh. But I'm reposing so much confidence on the current National Assembly members, seeing the drive and seeing the pattern. You are seeing
because there's also that bill on the FCT state too, among one of those states.
About the FCT state, after all they need to know is just to implement what Supreme Court have even defined FCT to be. Supreme Court have defined FCT to be a male child. There is no way you will come and say he's a woman. So if the Supreme Court have said FCT is a state in its own right, let's just implement it. Just go and cross the T and then, dot the I's and then ensure that full-fledged state structure is given to FCT, and everybody will go home happy.
All right, Humos, thank you so much, Comrade Honorable Dalhatu. Ezekiel Musa is a former federal commissioner with the Public Complaints Commission, and he represented the Federal Capital Territory in that commission. Humos, thank you so much for your immense wealth of knowledge and understanding of the issues. And of course, there have been several of these proposals, about 42 bills by the House of Representatives, and of course, the Senate will be concurring on some of them and of course, stepping down some of them. But we all look up to a better Nigeria where no section of the country is marginalized, and so that has been the reason for some of these bills, and we're all hoping that the right thing will be done when these legislative proposals and public hearings are held. Well, that's the much we can take on this edition of This Week. Thanks to our production team here in Abuja, Lagos and London. Do join us same time next week for another exciting edition. I'm Sam Sambo.